Hey Yvonne, welcome to When Spirit Talks.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me to be on, Stephanie.
I'm so happy to have you here because I love anything spiritual, but I don't know too much about astrology. And I know that's really what you've come here to share as well as your story. So I can't wait to learn about your story and all of the expertise you have.
Oh, I'm so excited. I absolutely love sharing astrology. It's my big passion since childhood. So I always get lit up to share and talk about it. And I can't wait.
Yay! So, if you can tell me and tell us about your journey and how you became an intuitive and spiritual astrologer, I'd love to know.
So astrology for me was interest since childhood. When I was growing up, both my parents are immigrants from Latin American countries. So we spoke only Spanish in our household. And with our television programs, we always bought the Spanish language ones. And there was this news program, and it was called Primer Impacto. And I absolutely loved it, not for the news. um, but as a child, my favorite segment was when they had this astrologer come on, and his name was Walter Mercado. He was very extravagant, would come on in robes, makeup, like all the theatrics. And he'd come on every single day on the news and give the astrology updates for every single zodiac sign. And once I figured out, I'm born on May 8th, that means I'm a Taurus, I would just sit there and wait and be like, all right, Walter, like, let me know what is happening for my zodiac sign. And then I learned, my dad is an Aries, my mom is an Aquarius, my brother's a Leo. And I was like, oh gosh, I want to know what's happening for them too. And that just really sparked my interest.
That is amazing. So, how old were you when you actually started like tuning in and really paying attention to that?
Oh, I was super young because I didn't start to watch English language programming until I started school because my teachers recommended that, where they said, it'll really help her learn the language. So that's what we just been watching the whole time. And then once I figured out, like, this is what it means for me to have that birthday. So I was definitely quite young when that happened. And I was so excited when my brother was born when I was 6. And then I found out he was a Leo.
Oh my goodness, that is so cute. That is amazing. And so, for anyone who doesn't know too much about astrology, can you tell us some more information about it?
Yeah, so astrology is such an amazing tool. It's one of my favorite things. It has helped me through so many of the difficult times that I've gone through, and also with realigning and finding my own purpose. And I'm sure a lot of folks are familiar with astrology potentially because, I know for myself growing up, I would look at magazines as well, and I would see the horoscopes that would be coming out and read them and look at them. And astrology goes way further and way more deep than just the horoscopes. So that's just a small facet of it. And that is all based on the sun sign. And a lot of people who may not know anything about astrology at least know their sun sign because that is dependent upon the season that you were born. So that's a really great place to start to look at your sun because your sun represents your life force, vitality. It's connected to where you shine, what you're meant to shine in the world. It's also connected to purpose. And it's such a great place to start because most people will come up and say, like, oh, my birthday is this day, I'm this sign, or they'll have at least that level of understanding. So for me, I'm a Taurus sun. So when I was young, I actually didn't really resonate with my sun sign. And that's quite common because a lot of us, we are growing into our sun signs.
Hmm.
So a lot of people I notice from readings, they tend to connect more with their sun as they get older in age because a lot of us as children, we resonate more with our moon sign.
That's interesting. I never knew that. I was going to say if there's one sign that people would like gravitate towards, what would it be? And you said sun sign, but I didn't know that it's one of those things that you might grow into and relate to a bit more as you get older.
Yeah, absolutely. And I felt that was the case for me. And unfortunately, too, it's one of the things that I always share with friends, when what we know about astrology sometimes is like the pop astrology, what's trending. And a lot of times it's what we see in the memes. And the memes are really deeply connected with the shadow archetypes of each zodiac sign. And I always tell clients, there's a shadow archetype with each zodiac sign, and there's also a higher archetype. So for me, growing up, I would see things and it would say like, oh, Taurus sons, like they're lazy, they're stubborn. And I remember just thinking like, that's horrible. I don't want to be associated with that.
Uh,
And
mm-hmm.
then I got older and I learned more about the higher archetype of Taurus. And it's about being embodied. It's about really being connected with the senses, being connected with the feminine. And I thought, whoa, that actually makes more sense. And I'm sure you relate with that too, with being a Scorpio sun. And I know there's so many memes that just like basically say all these things like, oh, Scorpio, like you're toxic or whatnot. And, that's not the case because all signs have a, lower shadow archetype. And then there's also the higher archetype.
Yeah, it's interesting because even so, I read tarot and same thing. The card has both, I wouldn't say negative, but negative and positive, or like the shadow versus the light. And it's the same for us humans. We all have that part of ourselves that we show off, that we show to the world, that we're proud of and comfortable with showing. But then we have those shadow parts that we kind of hide because they're not as what's the word? They're not as comfortable to show because they're those things that aren't the best, or those things that other people might deem as negative. So I didn't realize that about the signs specifically. I knew that, yes, there are great qualities to Scorpios for me because that's the only thing I knew. And the more negative qualities like the toxic, the jealous, that type of
Mm-hmm.
thing. But it was funny because I always say, like my sun sign, I am it to a T, except for that jealousy piece in
Yeah.
certain instances. Like that, I don't resonate with, but literally everything else is like me to a T. But I can't wait to hear what you bring up because later you're going to talk about my chart. So it'll
Yes.
be fascinating to see what that says. And you brought up the
Absolutely.
moon sign as well. So, what's the difference between a sun sign, a moon sign, and a rising sign?
So with the sun sign, again, that is really connected to the self, where we shine. It's what a lot of us know. And the moon sign is different because the moon sign is a little bit more behind the scenes because it represents our emotional world and our inner world. And especially as adults, where we're not really probably putting ourselves out there as much, like emotionally out there with folks, we may keep that a little more guarded, a little more close. We see that more with the people who we're very close with, people who we feel very comfortable with, and they see that moon quality in us. So the moon sign is really beautiful because it shows like what you need to feel emotionally safe, to feel connected with others, and it shows your emotional world. So it's a very beautiful quality to get to know and a planet to get to connect with as well.
So is it like the feminine aspect of energy would be the moon sign, whereas that masculine side of the energy would be the sun sign?
Yes, in the sense where the moon is definitely connected to the feminine because it is connected to the sign of Cancer. Cancer is connected to the feminine, and the sun is connected to Leo. And in astrology, the energy of fire and air represents the yang, the masculine energy, while the energy of water and earth represent the yin, the feminine energy.
Mm, awesome. And what about a rising sign?
So the rising sign, that one is so much fun. And I notice for myself when I am meeting people a lot of times, what I am picking up on is their rising sign, because our rising sign is how we show up in the outside world. It shows the lens that we filter things through in life, and it's our path to our purpose. So a lot of times, I can kind of pick up on someone's rising sign and I'll ask them, I'll be like, hey, do you have this sign prominent in your chart? And then they'll be like, no, I'm an ex sun sign. I'm like, okay, but then I asked to look at their chart, and usually I'll see like what I was picking up on was most likely their rising sign.
Wow, that is so interesting. What sign do you feel like people typically then resonate most with? Like I know you say you tend to sense that rising sign. What about people internally? Like what do you think they typically resonate with more when you are sharing all of that information with them?
Definitely with the moon sign for a lot of folks, because it is a representation of their internal world. And I think I notice more people too, who are more older, like they do tend to connect more with their sun sign. And it just really helps to sit down with the client and to let them know, there is a lower vibration energy for a zodiac sign, and there is a higher vibration energy. And that really does help people accept that a little bit more too, because they realize, like, oh, I don't have to just be stuck in those negative lower energies, like how you were saying with the Scorpio. You don't connect with the jealousy piece. And that is one of the lower vibrations of Scorpio. When you look at the higher vibration of Scorpio, it's all about alchemizing, death, and rebirth, having that phoenix moment as well. So if you're really working with that energy from a higher place, you're really taking that opportunity to turn that like carbon and pressurize it and turn it into the diamond and alchemize it in that way.
That is beautiful the way you just put that. It's like you're seeing all different facets. So what would a reading with you look like? And what could that reading potentially uncover?
So I love getting to read for people. It's my favorite thing. When I was starting off, would read everyone's chart that I came across because it was just something fun for me. And I loved, meeting people for the first time and looking at their chart, not knowing anything, and just, sharing what I'm seeing. And it's so beautiful because when I do a reading with a client, I always pull up their chart for them. The session is always recorded because I know for a lot of folks, the language of astrology is kind of like learning a second language. And there's a lot of terms and a lot of stuff that's brand new. So it feels like you're kind of being bombarded with information. So for me, it's very important to record the session and then give a copy of that recording to the client so they can go back and revisit and soak things in at a later period as well, and revisit anything, especially if it's a transit reading and they want to remember, like, what did she say was going to potentially happen on March 2023, Um, but I love looking at people's charts. And what I do in readings is I always have clients fill out a form ahead of time because for me, it's so important to understand and know what is the person's level with astrology, because I want to know where I need to meet you. Like, are you a beginner? Are you more intermediate? Are you more advanced? Because I don't want to throw things around like, for example, in my chart, I could read for someone and say, your sun opposes Pluto, and that's why you're very intense, even though you're a Taurus. And for someone who's a beginner, they'd be like, um, I don't understand what that means. While someone who's more advanced would be like, oh my God, yes, that makes sense. And someone intermediate might be like, can you give me a refresher of what opposing means? So for
Hmm.
me, that's so important to meet people where they're at with their astrology and be able to explain things in a way that is understandable and digestible for people of all levels. And I also have people share with me what it is that they want to explore and look at in their chart. And the two things I find people mostly want to come in for astrology readings is when they want more guidance around purpose and career, or they want to look at love and relationships. Those tend to be the two things that really bring people in for a reading.
Wow, wow. That's really interesting because even for me, like I said, I didn't know too much about it, but I didn't even think that you could access like a specific purpose of what do you actually want to uncover and then get that information.
Yes, it's such a beautiful thing because you can look at so many different aspects in a chart. And, when you really understand how a chart works, there's so much that you can cover, and it would take many readings to look at everything exactly. So that's why for me, I like to know what the client's main point of focus is, because it really helps me hone in, like, okay, like I really need to make sure we talk about, if the person says, I want to come in for a reading on purpose, like I want to make sure that I'm looking at the points in the chart that are connected to purpose, connected to career, connected to work, to how we make money, putting in these like extra juicy like tidbits that I know that'll give extra gems and extra juice to the reading for that topic, because I want to make sure that people are getting the most that they can from the reading.
Amazing. And what about uncovering their soul's cosmic blueprint?
Oh my goodness, that is one of my favorite things to do for folks, because that's what really helped me a lot with my own journey with astrology, because I saw in my chart that astrology was definitely a piece of it. And I had actually ignored it and was like, no, I think I'm cool with what I'm doing. Like, I seem okay. And I was really ignoring that. And it wasn't until I sat down and I really looked at my chart and gave it an honest look over that I was like, okay, like I do see this here and I need to work on that. This is an area that I tend to struggle in and I need to use more of that energy. And that's the beautiful thing with astrology, because there are so many points in the chart. There's the houses, there are 12 houses, and that's like a big part of the chart. So you can picture it like a pizza that's
Mhm.
cut into 12 houses, 12 little slices, and those are houses. And they represent areas of life, and they're all 12 different areas of life. And that's why it's so important to know your birth time, because without your birth time, we won't know what house a sign is in and what house a planet is in. And contrary to what folks believe, um, we have all the signs in our chart. We have all 12 signs. So if anyone out there ever says anything like, I don't like Geminis or I don't like Scorpios, be careful, because you have that in your chart. You may not have a planet there, but you do have it ruling over one of the houses in your chart. So it just shows how there's so many facets that make up a chart, and having all of the planets and being aware of, when are we in the shadow archetype of the planet, of the sign, and when are we in the higher archetype. And that really helps us alchemize and step into our purpose when we
Wow.
can get those kinds of readings and guidance.
Wow. So I like how you mentioned about everyone having every single sign. What about, have you ever noticed that the chart with someone is affecting their ability to have a relationship with someone else based on the signs in their chart? Like, could it be that the signs and the charts are just clashing and that's why you don't or you can't establish
Yes,
a good relationship with someone?
actually, yes, there is a branch of astrology and it is called synastry. And what synastry does is it takes two birth charts and it layers them over each other. And you get to see how the charts interact. And this is what a lot of astrologers who offer relationship readings do. It's called synastry, but you might have heard it as relationship readings or compatibility readings. And that's what it does. And it lets you see what is going on, because especially in, for example, a romantic relationship, let's put it with this example. If somebody has a moon in Cancer, this person is very sensitive, they're very intuitive, they feel their feelings, they really want to, discuss and connect with their person on a deeper soul level. And let's take someone who has an Aquarius moon. An Aquarius moon is going to feel much more comfortable with thinking about their emotions and being up in the mental sphere rather than being in the emotional sphere. So while the person who has the Cancer moon is saying something like, I really want to talk about our feelings, the person who has the Aquarius moon might be like, well, that's not very comfortable for me. I don't want to do that. Like, I'm just more comfortable processing what I think in my head and leaving it there. And
Mhm.
that can show in, a synastry reading, like, oh, this could be a point of tension. And that's what I do when I do synastry readings. I never tell anyone like this is like you need to break up or anything of that nature. I always just tell people, if I see points where there could be tension, there could be hardship, I do share and I say, this is just something to be aware of. And, maybe this is a discussion that needs to happen around how we communicate with each other and how we process and share our emotions. And it helps when okay, my partner here with the Cancer moon, they really want to talk about their emotions and process it. And the other person with the Cancer moon goes, okay. And my partner with the Aquarius moon is more comfortable talking about their feelings, processing it mentally first, and then maybe they're going to be open to it. So you can find more opportunities for compromise.
That's really helpful because I feel like it kind of uncovers all of these little layers and it helps you understand the person better without actually having to ask them because they might not even be aware of it.
Absolutely. And I think that's the beautiful thing with doing these kinds of readings with synastry, because you can understand each other a little bit more. And also, what I've noticed just from even looking at my own parents' birth charts and the charts of my friends and people who were in my past but no longer in my present, it lets me see what was going on in their lives. And I'm able to hold more compassion for them and understand why things may not have worked out as well.
Wow, that leads to huge growth.
Absolutely. I think it's such a beautiful thing. And I always think synastry is something beautiful to look at, especially for parents. You can do it with your child if you have children, you can do it with your partner, you can do it with friends, with like family members. It just opens up this really beautiful opportunity for understanding the people in your life. And even if you're not doing synastry, that's why I love astrology as well, because I have learned so much about the people in my own life from just looking at their charts and having more empathy for them, putting myself in their shoes and understanding like, oh wow, like this person has this really difficult placement in their chart and that's why they really struggle with this. It wasn't me, or them, like we weren't really like the problem, like they just have this issue and I didn't know about it and I was probably like poking at it.
Mhm. Yeah, it's like a huge level of understanding, it seems like it gives you. So I want to know about my chart now because I'm so excited. Um, really excited to dive in and learn some more about all of the details that you kind of pulled up. So I'm
Yeah.
ready.
So when I start readings, the first thing I like to look at, especially with someone like how you said, you knew that you were a Scorpio sun, is I like to see what's going on with your sun, your moon, and your rising. So for you, you have your rising sign in the sign of Leo. I love Leo rising people. One thing I notice about them is that they're very heart-centered people. They're very warm, very generous, very kind people, amazing storytellers as well, which makes sense because I know you have a book and you also work with children as a speech language pathologist. So that makes so much sense because I find children are very much drawn to the Leo energy because in astrology, Leo rules over the fifth house and that's connected to children. So
Hmm.
whenever I see people with like prominent Leo or fifth house placements, sometimes I do see that they work with children or they have children because children can be a very big theme.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I thought that was something really beautiful. And I love that you are a Libra moon. So Libra moon, I think, is a very beautiful placement because the Libra moon is looking to find balance. And that's what it needs to feel, emotionally safe and secure. Balance and also beauty and harmony. So, beautiful spaces, feeling like you're really enjoying the spaces that you're in. You feel very comfortable. If you're ever like in a space, sometimes it's just beautifying it and zhuzhing it up can really be a mood lifter. And with the Libra moon as well, what I think is so beautiful is that they really do seek for balance because Libra in astrology, I think one thing I've noticed a lot of people forget is that Libra is connected to justice. So it's looking for that sense of balance. And I find with a lot of my friends who have Libra moons, they're the ones who will listen to both sides of the story and then make a decision. They're not the ones who will be like, oh yeah, like you're right, or you're right. They're like, okay, like thank you for sharing your side of the story. I would love to hear your side of the story. And then they go on and make a decision because they're the mediators.
Interesting. So my mom's a Libra, and I totally see that in her, but she's that sun sign. And for me, when I'm interpreting it my way, it's interesting because that the fact that you mentioned the two sides, I do that. It's like something will happen and I'll be like, and they'll tell, someone will tell me something like this happened and this is how I'm feeling. And I'll be like, oh, but what about, maybe the other person thought this. And in the moment, I know
Exactly.
some people are like, I don't want to hear what the other person, what the other person's perspective is, but I do that.
Absolutely. I noticed that they tend to play like the devil's advocate where they're like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, but what do you think the other person was saying?" Cuz I have a friend like that too who does the exact same thing. And for me, I have a lot of water energy and I can be very deep in my feelings. And I definitely relate to that too, where it's like, I just want you to support my feelings. Like I don't care what the other person thinks. But when I saw that in her chart that she was also a Libra moon, I was like, oh, no wonder she was always trying to play devil's advocate and telling me, like, put yourself in the other person's side of the story. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes so much sense.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. And I never realized. I mean, I realized I did it, but I didn't really understand why I did it. So the fact that you mentioned that and explained that so well, it like hits home.
Oh, I love that. And you're a Scorpio sun. And what I noticed that was interesting about you with the Scorpio is that you have a stellium. So, a stellium in astrology is when we have three or more planets in the same sign. So for you, you have a lot of Scorpio energy because you have your Sun, your Pluto, your Mercury, and your Saturn in Scorpio, along with the South Node. So you have a lot of Scorpio energy. And for you, it shows up a lot in the fourth house. So our fourth house is connected to our family, to our roots, to our ancestors, to our home life. And sometimes when I see that there can be a tendency towards being a little more private, a little more reserved. It takes a little bit for people to kind of like chip away and break down the walls and get in. But once they are in, they are officially like in and ingrained with you because it takes a lot for someone with a lot of Scorpio energy, especially in a house like the fourth house, to allow folks in.
Makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. I do that. I do kind of keep that wall up. And it's funny because my husband will always say, he's like, when I first met you, I thought you were so cool and mysterious. And like, because I was so guarded, and he's like, now I look at you and you're such a goofball. But I don't show a lot of people that. And so yeah, that makes so much sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense because with the Scorpio, you really have to break down the walls and they have to feel very comfortable and safe with letting you in. And then you see what they're like. And a lot of people may not know this, but Scorpio is actually the only sign in astrology that is represented by two physical animals. So one is the scorpion, which everyone knows. Everyone knows the
Mhm.
scorpion, and they hear, like, you get stung by the scorpion tail. And the second one that not many folks know is that it's actually connected to the phoenix because Scorpio is connected deeply to the themes of death and rebirth, transformation, and power. So it is connected to that theme of the phoenix rising from the ashes. So I
Wow.
noticed that comes up a lot for people who have a lot of prominent Scorpio energy too, where they do tend to resonate too with that theme of the phoenix.
Wow. Thank you so much. I loved hearing all of that information and I really appreciate it. And it really did totally resonate. And
Oh,
I want to hear, I know you're creating an astrology certification course. So tell me more about it.
so I'm so excited about this. I am working to create an astrology certification. It's going to be called the Elevated Astrologer. And a big part of why I wanted to create this is also why I started my business. I would start off by reading people's charts for fun. And I had a lot of friends who would say, Yvonne, like, wow, you read my chart and I feel like you just sold my soul. And I had people who would give me feedback, but like, they got readings and they didn't get like half as much of the information that I gave them. And that made me really want to go out there and give readings. And as I started to give more people readings, I had people who were like, how can I study with you? How can I learn with you? Like, I really want to learn from you because I got so much value from this reading and I want to do this too. And that was a big part of why I wanted to do my certification and work on creating this and putting it out there to help other people who want to either learn astrology for their own personal growth. And like I shared, it's a beautiful tool to learn more about yourself and the people in your life. And it's also an amazing tool for those who want to either incorporate astrology into their already existing business or start an astrology business. And that's why for me, it was so important to create this because I want to take people beyond the basics. I see people who are putting together astrology courses and, it doesn't go in very deep. Like they touch on what are the houses, what are the planets, what are the zodiac signs, and then they send people on their merry way. But unfortunately, there are so many other pieces that make a reading so juicy and so amazing. Things like aspects, when you look at how planets interact with each other and you see that relationship, it can completely explain why someone like myself, who is a Taurus sun, my sun sits on the opposite end of my chart from Pluto. So it's very close together. And it explains one of the reasons why I'm one of those Tauruses who's very comfortable with change and
Mm.
actually seeks it out. And I've been told that I do come off a little bit intense, like a Scorpio at times. And I was always so confused. And it wasn't until I learned about how my sun and my Pluto were interacting in my chart that it clicked and made sense. So I feel like that's something so important. So I'm including lessons on specs, extra juicy things to add in there to the readings. Like I love looking at the nodes and talking about soul purpose and helping people find that. And just all of these amazing astrology gems that I have learned throughout my own journey, because I truly believe that it is important to share our knowledge. And I don't believe in gatekeeping. I love sharing what I know, and I want people to go out there who take this certification and be able to give readings that are one, empowering, two, that are ethical, because that's so important for me that the readings are ethical. People are learning at a high level and going out and giving readings, and as well as giving readings that are elevated as well. That's so important to me. Those are my three key things with my certification. I want people to go out there and do readings that are elevated, ethical, and empowering, and leave clients feeling like, whoa, that was amazing.
It sounds incredible. All of the information that you're putting in and all of that energy that I am just feeling from you as you're speaking about it, I think it's going to be an incredible program.
Yes, I'm so excited. So I'm having so much fun working on creating the outline and fleshing everything out. And for me, like I'm really working on creating this from a standpoint of what I wish I had when I was starting my astrology journey, and especially with the piece of wanting to start an astrology business, which is why I really want to also incorporate some bonus modules around business and how to start your astrology business. Because I feel for me, that was the one thing that I really wish was available in the courses that I took, because I had all this knowledge. I just didn't know how to apply it in creating a business. And as you know, having a business yourself, it is one of the biggest personal growth and spiritual journeys that you can go on having a business.
Yeah. And like you said, I think that success comes because you are coming from a place where you are putting everything into it because just like you said, it's what you wish you had when you were starting out. And that's what you are then giving to the world. So I love that. That's amazing.
Oh,
And
thank you.
We are going to start talking about the spirit segment. So I'd love
Yes.
to know one thing you always include in your daily routine that helps you stay grounded, that might help other people do the same.
I love meditation. And for me, there was a period where I would wake up and I would always be on my phone or do something else as soon as I would get out of bed. And it wasn't making me feel good. And I was reflecting back on what used to make me feel good. And for me, it was listening to a guided meditation in the morning and just starting my day off like that. And I've gotten back into that routine and it's been so magical. And it just helps me start off my day in such a grounded place. And I'm ready to take on what I have planned.
That's a great tip. Starting the day doing something that helps you reset and ground and like prepare for the day ahead is huge. Um,
Absolutely.
do you have a favorite story regarding your connection to spirit?
Oh my goodness. I do. One of my favorite stories about the connection with spirit is this beautiful womb healing session that I went to. And it was the first time that I was able to connect with the spirit of both of my great grandmothers on my father's side. And it was so magical because it was all about womb healing. And the facilitator told us to envision our mother putting her hand at the center of our back. And for me, it wasn't like that. It was my mother putting her hand on the left side of my back. And then my father had his hand on the right side of my back. And then she had us envision all of the women from like our mother's lineage. And behind my father were all of the women from his lineage. And I always feel one of his one of my great grandmothers all the time. And it's just so beautiful to feel her there. I feel my great grandmother, who I share a birthday with, her name is Trinidad, and I see her come a lot for me, as well as another one named Luisa, who was a native woman in Honduras. And that is just like my absolute most favorite magical moment of connecting with spirit.
That is so special and powerful because it's a testament that your ancestors and your loved ones are always behind you, regardless of whether they're here on earth, they are always behind you, like supporting you. They have your back. So I love that story. And what is one final piece of advice that you have for listeners who are trying to improve their spiritual well-being?
For me, the most important one has just been really tapping into my intuition when things are coming up. Like if someone is inviting me somewhere, to really tune in, like, yes, do I really want to go? Is it lighting me up? Is it exciting me? Or am I not feeling excited about it? Am I not feeling dread? And for me, I've noticed that just tapping into my intuition when it comes to little decisions like that, it has helped me out so much with feeling like I spent my day in a way that makes me feel good. I don't end up in those situations anymore where I go somewhere out of guilt or FOMO, or just because I feel like I have the energy, I should go out and do it. And then come home feeling like, oh God, I can't believe I did that. So for me, that's been the biggest thing because I love, at the end of the day, just feeling like I had a wonderful day. I did all the things that I wanted to do that made me feel good. And there's not one thing that I look back on. I'm like, oh man, I regret that.
That's a huge lesson. It's a huge lesson. And it's so important to connect to your intuition because you're right. If you really dig deep and listen, it will always guide you towards what you need. So beautiful. Where can people go to learn more about you?
So I hang out on Instagram, and my Instagram handle is at I am Yvonne Irene, and that's where I share astrology updates and have all of my links available for astrology readings. I have the wait list for my astrology certification up there as well, and all my little like freebies as well, which is great for those who want to learn more about the sun, moon, and rising sign. I have a freebie all about that.
Awesome. Awesome. Now, before we go, I pulled a tarot card for you to represent you. I know it's a surprise to represent you. And there'll be a message for everyone else at the end. But are you ready for your card?
Yes.
Okay. You got the Hanged Man, which in this deck is represented by this cocoon, which is like filled with this cosmic, beautiful blue. And when I saw it, I was like, it literally looks like space in this cocoon. And as you were talking and you mentioned how important it was for you to reflect and how that led to your spiritual growth and personal growth, that's what this is representing for you and like about you. And it's about surrendering, reflecting. The other thing that comes into play is like when you meet someone, you see what they're showing you, but it's like you go reverse and try to see things from different perspectives through the lens of astrology, which is just so cool because it's all about viewing things from, different ways. And it also potentially indicates that you might be experiencing some spiritual growth behind the scenes.
Ooh, that is such a beautiful card because as soon as you showed it too, when I saw like the the hanged man and it looked like a galaxy.
Yeah.
So I was like completely drawn by that. I was like, that's so beautiful.
And it's so funny because you're right. Like typically when you look at the cards or when you pull a card, there is a general meaning, but when you're reading it for someone, it's like something will stand out. And when I saw that, I was like, it's literally the stars in the picture, like covered up in this beautiful cocoon of like who you are. So I thought that was beautiful.
Oh, I love that. That was so amazing. I absolutely love that card. It was so beautiful.
Yay. And the message for everyone else who's listening is that it's important to take some time to pause and reflect. If you find that there are things externally that are kind of on hold, it is because there's something working behind the scenes to give you that transformation, that underlying energy that you need. So it's important to just surrender and let it be and let the universe do what it does best. So, Yvonne, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for telling me all about my birth chart. It was really, really interesting and it really resonated. And I can't wait for you to launch your course. You are an amazing person, and thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. I had so much fun looking at your birth chart. And I always say this to anyone who has a lot of Scorpio placements who lets me look at their chart. That is like the deepest sign of trust because Scorpio folks will keep things like very close to the chest and not want to share. So if I see someone with a lot of Scorpio energy, I'm always like, what an honor that I get to look at their chart and they felt enough trust in me to look at it.